As Rafiki said in The Lion King, it is time. I've been working on setting up my dashboard for days, and the best way to learn to use a new tool is to use a new tool. And so I'm gonna tackle a real project, my first project, with a dashboard and a track saw. Long story short, I need a project that's real, but I need a project that's not very important because I'm not ready to tackle something critical. I need to leave myself space to mess something up. So I'm going to make just some simple boards that I need to attach casters to a piece of shop furniture. These boards need to be 27.5 inches long by 10 3/8 inches wide. And that's the project. I'm gonna make this out of construction grade scrap lumber that I have sitting around. But I'm gonna pretend like this project is a little more important than it is, and actually run the boards through joiner and planer and make everything nice and flat and square. I will pick up, after the joiner and planer work, I will pick up here with the track saw and the dashboard, where I will have the opportunity to learn how to use these tools for simple crosscuts, rips, and then some edge joinery work with the domino, using the bench to make those boards wide enough. Okay, so I have my 9 boards here. Each of them, they all turned out to be 1 1/4 inches thick, which is sufficient once I got rid of all the warp and everything. Every one of them has one good edge and one that still needs to be cut off. If I were doing this my usual way, using the table saw and a miter saw, this would be pretty straightforward. But the goal here is to learn. So I want to learn how I would do this using my track saw and dashboard. One thing that's already new to me is this idea that you have to adjust the height of the guide rail to fit the workpiece. Right now, I mean, if I lower the guide rail without raising it high enough to fit my 1 1/4 inch board, then it's leaning like this, which just seems wrong. I've also come to understand from watching Rob's videos and other things that the guide rail really should be well supported, and this gap here between, since I'm just cross-cutting this piece here, all of this gap here might be a problem, and it's a good idea to put something of equal size under it, like that, further in, to support the guide rail during the cut, even though it's not the piece I'm cutting. So, can I just say, I'm really nervous about blade depth. I mean, on my table saw, when I forget to set the blade depth appropriately, and I have it too high, mostly the only outcome is I get a bunch of extra sawdust. In this case, if I have the blade depth set too deep, I'm going to cut this aluminum rail. And if that happens, I'm probably gonna cry, actual tears, on camera here. And so I'm worried about this. So initially for each board, all I really wanna do is cut off the bad end. These are like, you know, the original factory ends on some of them, and some of them have screw holes. I want each board to have to start out with one end that is a better cut, and then after that I'll do the cuts to length. So if you are stressing out about cutting too deep, then this is one of the things you could get. The board is 1.25 inches, so I set my cut depth at 1.25 inches, forgetting that the rail adds to that. And so I actually need to go deeper if I want to cut through the entire board. So I think I need to try this again. I cut through, but the back part of the board didn't cut all the way through, even though the front part of the board was cutting all the way through. And so when I tried to pull the scrap away, it didn't pull easily, and I ended up tearing something off because it wasn't a complete cut. And I think probably the reason for that is that my rail isn't level or something like that. It's like I've got it too high in the back or something like that. I'm going to make an adjustment and try this cut again just a little bit further up. So yeah, apparently the rail should be resting on the board, not being held up by the front or back guide rail brackets. One of those boards, I had to go back to the jointer. In fact, I noticed it because turns out that the F1 and F2 fences are quite co-aligned and straight, and the board was not, unlike all the other boards, was not aligning well with the fences. So I took a precision straight edge to it, found out I had not got it straight on my first time with the jointer, so I had to take it back for another round, and now it looks much better. Just as an example, the edge, the good edge that I just jointed and the cross cut that I just did here on the dashboard, taking a square to it, looks awfully good. This is only an 8-inch square, but still very precise. Pretty happy with that. So I now have 9 boards that all have one edge. Now I need to set up to cross cut them all to length. So I need to cut these to length to 27.5 inches. A day may come when I am cool enough to do my woodworking in millimeters instead of inches, but it is not this day. So 27.5 inches. When I was planning this project, I made this piece 27.5 inches to verify that I had gotten things right on the Shopfog slugs and that this fit in there nicely. So ordinarily what I would do is use the rip gauge to copy the length to the rip gauge and then use that to set a stop. However, the rip gauge capacity appears to be 25 and something. 27.5 is just slightly too long, so I don't get to use that fancy approach. However, I have this already, so what I've done is simply tried to line it up by the cut line from the splinter guard, set the stop that way. I used a tape to verify it, so I'm checking it in a couple of different ways. And even as I do that, I'm reminding myself that I'm practicing for the kind of precision I would need for fine furniture, but this is not fine furniture. Looks very good. I'm happy enough with that. So this board is all done except for rip to width. So set this over here. 8 more to go. Over here at the table saw, if I were doing this on the table saw, then I would think of the ripping task as being fairly straightforward. I would set the fence for each piece to 5 3/16 because I need to edge glue 2 of them together to make 10 3/8, so half of that is 5 3/16. And then I would put the good edge against the fence, and basically you can see in there I would be ripping off a very, very small sliver of each board. So these turn out really nice. You can line them all up, and you can feel how they're all the same length. Very happy with that. So when I was thinking about how to do these rips, I need to rip all of these to 5 3/16. And when I was thinking about how to do that with the dashboard, as I said, this is really straightforward on a table saw, just using a fence and the blade. But one of the hang-ups that I got stuck on was that all the videos of Rob's that I had watched so far, when he was doing rips, he had a track star on each end of the bench and a long rail going all the way from that track star to that track star. And I don't have a rail that long. And so I was thinking, I'm going to be stuck. I don't know. There's no way to do this. So I went back and watched more Rob videos, and I found the video that he did, the full-length video on cabinet making, which at this point is a little dated because it was made a couple of years ago, I think. And so some things have changed, and I'm on what Rob calls the Gen 2 system, which is some stuff's different. Nonetheless, in that video, he showed a section on short rips in which he put a short guide rail using spiral dogs into the dog holes of the bench instead of on track stars at either end. And I remember I looked at that actually earlier today. I was about to say I remember, but I just found this today. I looked at that and I said, oh, I can do that? Oh, well then let's try that. So that I do have. I have a 55-inch rail, which if I understand correctly, is just gonna go somewhere like this. Now he attached the rail into these dog holes the same way he attached them to the track stars using these spiral dogs. And I have to admit, I'm enough of a newbie that I didn't really understand what spiral dogs were until very recently. The Dashboard PWS website describes spiral dogs as a better form of rail dogs, or an improvement over rail dogs, I think, or something like that, which seems like a great comparative explanation for people who know what rail dogs are, but I didn't. Now I'm starting to get it. It's basically a rail dog, or in this case a spiral dog, is a thing you put in the T-track at the bottom of your guide rail so that you can mount said guide rail into either some holes or slots on your bench. And so you put the spiral dogs in here, and those are, in this case, going to go into holes. Now, I really felt like when I watched that video, based on my recollection, that Rob inserted the spiral dogs into the second row of holes. But it's clear when I start to try and do that, that the splinter guard is going to be still over the MDF, over the bench itself. So that's not going to work. I must be remembering this wrong. I need to put this in the first row of holes. So I'm dropping it in like that. It's a little weird. I mean, it seems like this is hanging way over, further over the edge of the bench than I thought it would. So I remain uncertain if I've got this right, and I may stop and go back and watch more videos. So I went back to Rob's cabinet making video for the section on shorter rip cuts, and turns out I was remembering it incorrectly. The spiral dogs, when you're trying to mount a rail this way, the spiral dogs do not go in the front set of dog holes or the second set of dog holes. They go in these special holes that are not round. They're a little bit elongated, and those holes, first of all, they have a little more slack to them to make it easier to take the rail in and out. Also, they are between the two rows, which resolves the problem of the splinter guard, the cut line, landing too far off the bench or not off the bench. And so if I just drop this rail in there, and I have some scraps from my crosscuts set up here, now the rail appears to be easier to deal with and kind of in the proper place for these rips. So I need to set up two parallel guides, as I understand it, which are going to slip under the rail and provide a stop for me to slide my workpiece, the good edge of my workpiece, under the rail against these two parallel guides. And that will leave the side I want to cut over there by the splinter guard. And so I need 5 3/16 inches in width. I don't have something cut to that width for copying with the rip gauge. So what I've done here is just taken an old school square, and I'm going to use that to set the rip gauge, or attempt to do so, and hopefully end up with 5 3/16 on the rip gauge, which I can then use to set the parallel guides. So with any luck, I've got this set up right. I have my rip gauge set to 5 3/16, and I'm going to, looks like I need to insert it upside down under the rail, with the lip that represents the saw kerf against the splinter guard gently, And then I'm going to slide the parallel guide stop up against it and tighten it down. Same thing over here. And hopefully, I now have my setup for ripping. Let's take a look and see. I'm going to put one of the boards in there and see if it looks like it's right. So here's one of the boards, one of the narrow ones that came from a 2x6. So I'm going to try and insert this board. Got hung up on the rail a little bit, but after that it does go in there, and it looks like I'm going to be ripping off a very thin edge to get this edge straight and to width, which is what I would expect it to be. So far this looks good. Okay, so I understand I need track stars here in front to support the piece or catch whatever falls off or something. I'm not sure what I need this for. In this case, maybe I don't, but I'm going to put them there anyway to see what's going on. So I have one track star here. I'm just going to slide this over here. Not sure what height I should have these at. In this case, the track star, it doesn't come far enough over to actually get involved in the wood as far as I can tell. I'm not entirely sure these are necessary in this case, but I think I understand the general concept. The most important thing here, from my point of view, is that whether they add any value or not to this cut, they should not be in the way. I do not want anything that's not supposed to get cut getting cut. And so I'm looking here, the saw kerf, the splitter guard where the saw blade is going to go nothing is directly under it low enough to cause trouble. Although I see no reason for these track stars to be any higher than necessary, since I don't know if they're actually going to be very helpful. Okay, it's time to try one of these rip cuts. Well, it doesn't appear that anything serious went wrong. I did, in fact, get the thin strip of wood that I thought I would get. And as expected, it is much thinner at one end than the other, confirming that that edge was not straight and parallel to the other one, which means this was worthwhile. Let's try So let's try removing the board and see how it looks. This should be 5 3/16 across. Using just a tape, that is exactly right on that end. Looks very good on this end as well. Let's just get a bit fussier and go with the calipers. I would love to see how close the two ends are at greater precision and accuracy than a tape can give me. So on this end, I am 5.197. At this end, I am 5.193. So a discrepancy of only 4/1000ths of an inch. So a discrepancy of 4/1000ths of an inch across the two ends of a 27-inch board. I'm more than happy with that. That is well under a 64th of an inch, especially when you consider the fact that this was my first ever rip cut with the track saw. So, like I said, that worked out really well. Everything is still set up. So I'm going to go ahead and rip the remaining 8 boards. One thing I should admit is that before I started these rip cuts, I was preparing to celebrate the fact that I made 9 cuts when 9 pieces when I only needed 8, and that I got them all right without screwing any of them up. And unfortunately, that turns out to be not true. Because on the board where the board that I had to send back to the jointer, I ripped the wrong edge. So the crooked edge, in fact it says right there, crooked. The crooked edge is still with us, and so it's not that crooked, but it's still wrong. So this is this now has become the 9th piece, the one that is not going to survive into the next round. Okay, I have my 8 boards, and I'm happy with the results. I have to admit I am pretty attached to my table saw, but if the track saw and dashboard were attempting to replace my table saw, they gave a pretty good first audition. Can't say that I'm not impressed. The next step here is to edge glue these, and to do that I'm going to just put 2 dominoes in each one, and I've set them up like this so that I can just mark a position across each. I've paired the boards off, and I'm just going to mark a spot for each pair to cut the mortises. And I haven't thought a lot yet about how to clamp things and hold things for the mortise cutting, but I think I saw Rob do this in a video as well. I'm guessing I can just use the same 2 track stars that I used during the rip cuts and clamp the board to those track stars, and just to hold it in place while I cut the mortises. You know what? Change of plans. I think I'm going to try without clamps. Clamps feels like overkill for this this endeavor. All I really need to do is hold this board in place. I should be able to do this with a couple of bench dogs. So if I just put those bench dogs there to hold this, slide these track stars out of the way, I figure I should be able to just cut those mortises like this, and that'll make it easier to do all 8 one after another without having to adjust the clamps in between. Okay, I think I'm ready to cut these mortises. Got the dominoes set up with the height of the fence, I think appropriate for these boards. You know what? On second thought, I'm not super experienced with the domino either. You know what I should do? I should practice on the reject piece these mortises first, just to make sure that I'm not being overconfident about any of this setup. But let's see how it goes. Okay, so I think that's fine. The mortise is the right width. I went with the smaller width setting. It's approximately in the center of the board, which is what I was aiming for. Holding things felt solid, just didn't feel like things were going to move around. I think I feel all right going ahead to cut all of the actual mortises. Actually, another change of plans. Before I cut the other 6 boards, might as well just do a quick sanity check dry fitting these with the dominoes, make sure everything seems all right. All right, let's see here. Surprising amount of dust. I wonder if my Festool vac needs a cleanup as I chomp on some of those dust shavings I just accidentally inhaled. So let's drive this domino in, this domino in, and I wonder if I'm going to be able to get this apart when I'm done. This is supposed to be just the dry fit. Okay, so things went together. The ends are very nice and flush. Can't say I'm impressed with the ridge here between these two boards, but I don't think that's. I'm not sure what mistake I would have made to cause that. This one is nice and smooth. This one is not, and in fact, it's messed up on both sides. So it's not a board thickness issue, it is a domino issue. Okay, for the sake of practice, I wanted to get that resolved. I took out the dominoes that I did, put the boards back together, drew another line to try and do a new set of dominoes, recut the mortises on that side, trying to be careful to make sure that the table was clean and that there was nothing changing the height. And then I reassembled things, and now it's much, much better. So probably just a domino user mistake. I think this setup is right, and I'm ready to go ahead and cut the remaining mortises. So, bottom line, I messed some stuff up here, but that is my tendency. That's why I call this channel Shop Klutz. Nonetheless, I consider this project a success. I've got these boards all ready to glue up. The system, in my opinion, worked really well, especially for a complete newbie at these kinds of tools. I can't make any complaints. Perhaps most importantly, I really feel like I've learned a fair amount about this system and how to use it, and I'll be able to make fewer mistakes as I go forward. Thanks for watching.